Modern anxiety, that persistent buzzing dread over emails and mortgages, feels like a cruel evolutionary joke. Yet without it, you wouldn't exist. Your ancestors would have become leopard lunch or frozen fossils long before they worried about anything more complex than a successful hunt. If you're fascinated by the dark ironies of human evolution and want to understand how our greatest psychological burdens were once our most potent survival tools, consider subscribing. The sheer paradox is immense. How could a state now requiring extensive therapy have been the silent architect of humanity's ascent, a critical component that specifically countered the brutal, unyielding gauntlet of ancient threats? Our very capacity for worry, for persistent hypervigilance, for the almost pathological anticipation of future dangers, didn't just emerge by accident. It was meticulously forged in the crucible of prehistoric survival, refined through countless millennia of selection pressure. It was not merely a reaction to immediate peril, but a proactive computational engine, constantly scanning, assessing, and extrapolating, allowing our early hominid relatives to perceive patterns in the seemingly random chaos of their world that others, less anxious, simply missed. This predisposition wasn't a flaw, it was a feature, a sophisticated neural alarm system whose sensitivity determined who survived the night and who merely became another layer in the geological record. The true nature of this anxiety, however, was far removed from the existential ennui of the modern human. It was a visceral, life-or-death calculus, constantly running in the background of consciousness, dictating everything from foraging strategies to mate selection. We inherited this powerful, yet now often maladaptive system, a legacy of ancient terror repurposed for trivial modern stressors. The specific terrors that sharpened this primordial anxiety were anything but trivial. They were the omnipresent, visceral realities of the Pleistocene epoch. Imagine a landscape teeming with predators far more formidable than anything alive today. Saber-toothed cats capable of dissecting a large mammal with a single bite, dire wolves hunting in packs with relentless efficiency, short-faced bears, behemoths weighing over a ton, able to run faster than a human. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every shadow lengthening at dusk, every unfamiliar scent carried on the wind triggered an immediate, non-negotiable neural response. Those early hominids who possessed a heightened sense of threat perception, who registered the subtle cues of danger before their more nonchalant peers, were demonstrably more likely to escape. This wasn't merely a flight reflex, it was the anticipatory dread, the cold knot in the stomach that compelled them to avoid certain paths, to seek higher ground, to maintain constant vigilance, even during moments of relative calm. Resource scarcity added another layer of pervasive, low-level anxiety. Where would the next meal come from? Would the berries be ripe? Was that water source contaminated? This wasn't a fleeting concern. It was a chronic existential query that drove innovation and resourcefulness. The anxiety of future hunger propelled decisions to store excess food, to develop more efficient hunting tools, or to establish temporary settlements in areas of predictable abundance, all driven by a relentless internal forecast of potential deprivation. Intertribal conflicts further refined this anxious wiring. The threat of rival groups, of territorial disputes, of raids for resources or captives meant that suspicion and a rapid assessment of unfamiliar faces became paramount. Trust was a luxury, caution a necessity, and those who instinctively navigated these dangerous social waters with a degree of healthy paranoia often outmaneuvered their less guarded counterparts, ensuring their genetic anxiousness propagated. Beyond immediate threat response, the sustained low-level hum of ancestral anxiety fostered incredibly sophisticated cognitive and social advantages, shaping not just individual survival, but the very structure of nascent human society. This chronic sense of unease pushed early hominids beyond simple reactive behaviors into proactive planning and foresight. The individual constantly visualizing potential negative outcomes, the ones who worried about winter's unforgiving grip even in the warmth of summer, were the ones who directed their groups to prepare. This manifested in meticulous food preservation techniques, the construction of more robust shelters, and the development of specialized tools for specific seasonal challenges. Such individuals became indispensable, their anxious foresight seen as wisdom rather than weakness. Consider tool development. The spear wasn't just invented, Its design was iteratively refined by minds anxious about the durability of the tip, the balance of the shaft, the effectiveness against a charging beast. Every incremental improvement was driven by a subconscious calculus of risk reduction. Socially, anxiety played a crucial, albeit uncomfortable, role in reinforcing group cohesion and identifying deviance. The fear of ostracism, the profound anxiety of being cast out from the protective circle of the tribe, enforced adherence to nascent rules and norms. Individuals worried about their reputation, about maintaining trust within the group, and this internal pressure minimized destructive internal conflicts. Conversely, the ability to quickly perceive and react to untrustworthy or potentially dangerous individuals within a neighboring group was a direct product of this anxious social intelligence, often preventing disastrous alliances or betrayals. This intricate dance of individual worry and collective benefit slowly but surely sculpted the foundations of complex social structures. The relentless pressure of these environmental and social factors led to a profound genetic entrenchment of anxious predispositions, shaping our very biology through an inexorable feedback loop. Individuals with a more sensitive amygdala, a brain region central to fear and emotion processing, were simply more likely to survive encounters with predators or avoid resource-poor territories. They perceived danger faster, reacted more decisively, and passed on the genetic blueprints for that heightened vigilance. This wasn't just about fleeing, it was about the nuanced behavioral shaping that followed. A chronically anxious ancestral human might instinctively choose a cave with only one entrance, ensuring defensibility, rather than a more spacious but exposed rock overhang. They might prefer the arduous path over rugged terrain, where ambush was less likely, rather than the seemingly easier route along an open riverbank. These micro-decisions, aggregated across generations, slowly but surely etched anxiety into our species' fundamental operating system. Early human migration patterns, for instance, were often dictated by an anxious assessment of risk versus reward. Pioneering groups pushed into new territories, yes, but those who made it furthest were often the ones who exhibited prudent caution, sensing the subtle signs of impending ecological shifts or hostile encounters. Cultural taboos, seemingly arbitrary rules passed down through oral tradition, frequently had their origins in anxieties that were once profoundly rational. The fear of certain foods, places, or even colors might have stemmed from long-forgotten but very real dangers: a poisonous plant, an area frequented by apex predators, or a visual cue for a rival tribe. These fears became ossified into cultural prohibitions, unconsciously guiding behavior long after their original life-saving context was lost to memory, a testament to anxiety's deep, pervasive influence. The enduring legacy of this evolutionary success is the profoundly ironic predicament we face today. A brain perfectly wired to survive the savannas of the Pleistocene, now tasked with navigating the infinitely more complex, yet physically less threatening demands of the 21st century. The same neural circuits that once screamed "run" at the sight of a shadow now trigger panic over an unopened email. The hypervigilance honed to spot a lurking predator now manifests as endless scrolling through news feeds, searching for threats in the digital ether. Our ancestors' genius was to be chronically concerned, to anticipate every possible negative outcome, because the cost of being wrong was extinction. The cost of being wrong today, however, rarely involves a swift mauling, but rather a missed deadline, a social faux pas, or a fluctuating stock portfolio. Yet our bodies react with the same cascade of stress hormones, the same elevated heart rate, the same primordial dread, as if a saber-toothed cat were about to pounce from behind the cubicle wall. This ancient life-saving mechanism, brilliant in its original context, is now largely maladaptive, a finely tuned alarm system perpetually blaring in a world where most dangers are abstract and slow-moving. The ultimate irony is that our species owes its very existence to this pervasive, often uncomfortable sense of anxiety. We are here because our progenitors worried about everything, because they couldn't relax, because their minds were a relentless threat assessment algorithm. And now, we are left grappling with the physiological and psychological echoes of that magnificent survival strategy, struggling to simply turn off the very system that ensured we had a future to fight over.